So when we talk about doing Dharma practice, primarily there are two ways of doing it. One, as is done, or at least tried to do in Tibet, was to completely renounce the world and think about the next life or next lives. But for most of us, it's impossible task. So therefore, we need to follow His Holiness' suggestion, where he says 50-50. That's 50% for this life, 50% for next life. Okay? Because in terms of actual practice, it's really not easy to just give up everything, and it doesn't make sense also, especially for us Tibetan struggle for preserving the Tibetan culture, going back to Tibet. If everybody renounces, go into the mountain, then that of course is not possible. So 50-50 I think is a very good suggestion. 50-50 also in the sense of taking care of your body and also mind. Until now we are primarily taking care of the body, hardly anything about the mind. So in the case of taking care of the body and the mind also, it should be like 50-50. So 50-50 means, how would you do 50? How would you spend 50% taking care of your mind? With the body it is easy, You can brush your teeth, comb your hair, wash your body, so many things you can do. But with the mind, what would you do? We can do what is known as inner laundry. Inner laundry. Because there's more than the dirt of the body, there's so much dirt that has been collected in the mind, what is known as negative emotions. So in order to purify that dirt, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And therefore also it is important to do that, as I said, to start with, try to read some of the texts that you can handle, but not so difficult, that will put you off, but some text that you can really handle, like His Holiness teaching, which is very, very easy to understand. Start with that. Then also learn to live alone a little bit. One of the modern problem is we don't know how to live with others and also don't know how to live alone. There are only two choices. Either you live harmoniously with others or you need to learn to live alone. And we are not good in any of these two things. Yes, associating with others, living in harmony with others, we are compelled to do that. That has to be done. But also spend a little bit time for yourself. Sit alone and then just remaining alone, not doing the usual, not so useful things. And sit alone and do a little bit of thinking. What's the meaning of this human life? If you are trying to do something good, trying to achieve something good, how can I achieve that? Do a little bit of mental exercise. I think that's very important. We are living in a world where we are very much dependent upon the received knowledge. That means we are encouraged to read books. Okay, good, read books. Listen to others. Yes, good. But who has written these books? How come that great teachers are able to teach? In many cases, they are able to do that because not only they have read the ordinary books, but also they have read the nature. As we say, nature is an open book. And you can learn so much just by being aware what is happening around you. Are we aware? Normally, this is a question you have to ask yourself. Are we aware in our daily life? Not so much. Our eyes are wide open, but we keep on seeing what we want to see. Ears also open, but we keep on hearing what we want to hear. not what we should be hearing, not what we should be seeing. That's why there is no progress. The same person with the same knowledge, same information, same ways of life, no change, no transformation. So therefore, to get enlightened, to get enriched with knowledge is not just reading books, but keeping your senses and sense consciousnesses open and make it receptive to what is there in the rest of the world. Like even in the case of one flower, if you are able to ask this one small question, what's the name of this flower? What part of the year this flower will blossom and grow? With this kind of scientific spirit, and in Buddhism we call it the spirit of reasoning and inquiry. If you do that, your knowledge will increase by leaps and bounds. It will be so easy for you to become a well-informed men and women. And then very often I said that on some of the very difficult topics, without just reading a book, just sit down and think for yourself. You are also a human being with such human potential. And think for yourself, what could be the meaning of this one? That's really, really important. Because if you adopt that kind of habit of life, then the knowledge that you will get will be so interesting. It's not like sitting in a classroom and whether you like it or not, you need to sit there until the bell rings, That's why in the schools we hardly learn. Even you stay there for 11 years, then another 3-4 years in the university. Even after how many years? Nearly 15 years, when we come out from the university, our real knowledge is very poor. Because we don't have that habit of questioning and understanding by yourself. So therefore, in the system of Tibetan education also, it's important that the students, or whoever is interested, let them explore. Let them come up with questions. And let them find the answers for themselves. If not, then they can discuss with other people. Then the process of getting knowledge will become very interesting. Because everywhere you go, you're going to Meghalorganj, reading a board or meeting some people, you will know everything. But otherwise, we sit with some people for 10 years, but we don't know their name. We pass through the same tree, same flower, how many times? Say 30 years. But if somebody comes, what is the name of this flower? I don't know. And I have this experience. We all have this experience. So it's important to really ask these questions in general, particularly the pertinent questions. What is the meaning of life? Is it just eating, sleeping, getting married, or a little bit more? And what is the state of the world today? What is happening? I'm not just telling the individual stories, but the world as a whole, is it really becoming better or worse? Climate becoming better or worse? Ask some of these pertinent questions and then see what is the problem. How can we address those problems? Because each of us has a responsibility to that. Then your process of learning will become very interesting. So therefore, when we talk about doing dharma practice, we are not talking about just leaving everything behind and then go, If your mind is not ready, even if you throw everything, it doesn't make any sense. It's stupid. And it actually happened at the time of Milarepa. Milarepa was such a renounced practitioner that he really didn't have anything. And then somebody who was receiving teaching from the Milarepa, he got so inspired, then he said, there and then he decided, I will also become Milarepa. He gave away all his wealth. Because his mind was not ready, therefore he started suffering. And then he said, it's Milarepa who made me a beggar. Milarepa ngapango susulavdese. So it's not just when we talk about Buddhism, it's not like throwing away all your wealth and become a beggar, and produce a population of jobless group. We are not talking about that. In fact, in the Buddhist teaching it says, human beings cannot prosper, cannot be happy without wealth. But then, therefore, it's important to understand the Buddha's teaching in the right context. Otherwise, many people say, oh, if we practice Buddhism, then we'll not make any progress in our country. Many people, therefore, even among young Tibetans, there are people who are now have started saying bad things about Buddhism. And others, they may not say anything, but deep down they may be feeling, oh. They may not be saying, but what I need is the avril. Avril, you know? Avril. What I need is the avril. Avril means money. Or kungathundup. So that's the thing. But as I said, unless you have this inner fire, inner spirit, inner energy, you're not going to achieve anything. It's easy to get excited. Oh, I'll do this, do that, let us practice, don't talk. It's easy to say. But how would you do that if there is no inner fire? If the engine is not moving, how will you do that? You will start shouting slogan, for a few days, then after that, the vapor is gone. So in order to do anything, persistently, consistently, relentlessly, there should be deeper awakening for yourself, for others. Just like His Holiness. It's amazing to see him, like he's 80 years old. But still he's concerned for other people's well-being. Day before yesterday I met him, His Holiness. I was just, as usual, like highly moved, with his sense of responsibility. He's always asking what is happening about the younger Tibetan generation, how are they doing, things like that all the time. So that's the thing, you see. And I've seen him that whenever he gives a long public teaching, say 10 days or 2 weeks, ordinarily speaking, it should be very, very tiring, But I've always seen him that when he finishes like 10 days or 2 weeks teaching, after that he's like bubbling with energy and so happy. There's so much sense of satisfaction there. In the case of the ordinary people like us, I would say, oh, thank God, I finished the talk. Now is the time to relax, things like that. Because the motivation may not be good, there may be no genuine enthusiasm, it's like that. So His Holiness is committed to helping others. So therefore there is joy, there is delight. That's what I was saying yesterday. Making effort means delighting in what you are doing, enjoying what you are doing. So that's important. So that's why I was saying that 50-50. Don't think that if you start doing Dharma practice, then you will get divorced, you will have to go to the mountain, don't worry about those things. I'm not talking about that, okay? We are simply talking about becoming a good human being. Somebody who thinks more about others than just oneself. Okay? So that's what I'm talking about. So yesterday we were talking a little bit about the faults of samsara. So the next topic says that if you are born in the samsara, that means you are born in the samsara not out of your choice, but through the power of karma and negative emotions, helplessly. If somebody comes to you and asks you this question, I know you are here in this world. Did you come here out of your choice? Did you come here out of your choice? Of course, we cannot say I came out of my choice. No, I was just born. And then when you will die, will you go out of your choice? When to go, where to go, how to go? We can't. Because in between also we have no choice. We think we have choice, but not much choice. If you have good choice, then why don't we start doing the good things, We want to do good things. It is not that we don't want to do good things. We want to do good things, but we are not able to do because we are subject to the dictates of the bad habits, the habits of negative emotion and so forth. So therefore, Dharma practice means to make yourself habituated with the positive ways of thinking, so that the positive activities and positive deeds, positive speeches, they come voluntarily, effortlessly. As Shantideva says, it's only a question of getting habituated. The great sportsmen, who do the daredevil, sports, they are able to reach that state through practice. The great physical gymnasts, they are able to reach that state through practice. Whether it's a musician or singing, whatever, you become expert through practice. If you don't practice, nothing will come there. So you need to practice. Form it a part of your habit. And in order to do that, you need to see the reason why you have to do this. So therefore, out of all the practices, the practice of mind training is so important. Because if you train your mind thoroughly and properly, whatever may be the ups and downs in life, you will not be shaken. Otherwise, if there is a small problem, small difficulty, you get completely shaken. Oh my God, what should I do? But if you are somebody who has this overall, perspective and understanding of the multifarious aspects of the things that we experience in the world, when they arise, you say, oh, I know, it has to come. And therefore Shantideva says, if it is something you can change, don't worry, because you can change. If it is something you can't change, no use worrying, because by worrying you can't change. As simple as that. If you have that understanding, then you will be very sensible. Okay. Then another fault of being born in the samsara out of the force of the negative emotions and karma is that you will be born again and again, because you have no choice. So therefore, the purpose of Dharma practice is so that you are able, you don't have to born again and again in the samsara. In other words, you are able to achieve a state of peace and happiness from where there is no falling back. Ordinary peace and happiness we have experienced so many times. In this life also, if you are, say, a young man of, say, 25 years old, during the last 25 years, you have experienced so many things. You have enjoyed many delicious food, you have met many friends, your parents loved you, so many things. But today, if I ask you, where are they? The things that you enjoyed in the last 25 years, where are they? Just a dream. Similar like the dream that you had last night. Your 25 years of experience, which is going to make a long movie if you make a movie, and the dream that you had last night, similar. Today when you reflect back, there's not much difference. So the rest of your life will also go like that. And you are not able to achieve much from what you have experienced. So therefore now we should try to live a life so that we have a dream which is worth dreaming, where you are able to see back and feel, yes, I have done something. Therefore His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, irrespective of whether you are very well versed in Buddhism or not, but at least in your life, if you are able to help, say, 20, 30 people in your life, I have helped 20, 30 people, then your visit to this world is becoming meaningful. And if you are able to help more, of course, wonderful. And if you are unable to do that, it's nothing amazing that you have been a very famous person or very wealthy person. Just before coming here, one of my library staffs, he said, Geshe-la, so many people there. Geshe-la is becoming very famous. I said, I could have become famous a long time back if I tried, So that is, of course, like not the intention, If you have that intention, then it's completely wrong. Because the fame and name is actually source of problem. Wealth is source of problem. At the end of the day, fame and name. You remember how Lady Diana died? She was very famous, so people wanted to interview her and chased her, and then she had a car accident and died. And now I know many people who are so-called so famous, they are always, followed by a bunch of police people and have no privacy, you see. Min kosa kambu tsemo la chito zik na. Savani chapa azama kebaru dena chopa la asilabre. So name and fame is like climbing a tall, branchless, leafless tree. The higher you climb, the greater is the risk to fall down. Kotile thangwa sadinga deshan riye yomar tagarana. This quotation is from Kongtang Tembe Dome. So don't think, Tibetan, many people think, oh, if I read English, it's so easy to understand, so nice. If I read Tibetan, it's so difficult, Because you don't know which text to read. Like this text from Kongtang Tembe Dome is so beautiful. Min kosak kambu zemo la chitu chitun zikche na sawana chakba asame kebaru dena chawala se. Yesterday I read these lines from the 7th Dalai Lama. Thome jasin pomo sundar la te jang chaluk namjur photop chejong zamado dogi mise kewa nyam to dogbe kenyam trokji namji nang sundi jowa. So beautiful. So there's so many there. You need to read. You need to read. We'll try to publish some of them. Then we'll force you to read, okay? And then the fifth fault of being in the samsara is that there is this fault of ups and downs, no certainty. Too much ups and downs. Too much ups and downs is not good for your health. It will increase your blood pressure. Too much ups and downs. Today happy, tomorrow suffering, the next day happy, So what you need is that there should be a kind of stable peace and happiness. Kind of equilibrium, stable. Too much ups and downs is not good for your health. So therefore, in Tibetan, ordinary Tibetan saying, we say, "Midi thapja hiuju the ga chokjo duk chokjo sidwa." So you should not be like that, You should not be somebody who is easily excited, when you experience something good, you get so happy, you burst out, When you experience some problem, you just get completely deflated and want to just disappear into the ground, Not like that. Not like that. You should be stable. It's good for your health, physical health and mental health. Very important. And the sixth fault is the fault of having no real friends. That means when you die, you cannot take any of your friends with you. You cannot take anything with you. You cannot take even your ATM card. One, because in the next world right now there is no ATM machine. So even even if you use the latest modern technique, the modern technique is like we call it quantum mechanics. The quantum mechanics is talking about going and using the subtlest, smallest thing. Quantum, the smallest packet of energy. We talk about that. So even if you use that quantum mechanics, it will not help you when you go to the next world. So therefore, in the samsara, because it's contaminated, afflicted emotions and so forth, there's nothing which is really, reliable. Whether it's friends, whether it's a name or fame or whatever, there's uncertainty. Because the more you enjoy these worldly pleasures, the more you will get stuck into problem. It's like drinking salty water. The more you drink, the more you get thirsty. As I said yesterday, that how many things we have enjoyed. Are we satisfied now? If you have only 100 rupees, you want, next time I should have 1,000. When you get 1,000, oh, still I'm so poor, I need 1 lakh. Get 1 lakh, oh, so small. 1 crore and so forth. There's no end to it. There's no limit to it. So there should be, a limit somewhere. Okay, this is enough now. For me, this is enough. Now I should do something good for others. Like among the Tibetans also, those who are relatively well off, then they should be able to say, okay, for me now this is enough. Now you should use this money for the health of the poorer people, for the education of the poorer people. Now this is another revolution that we need to bring about in the Tibetan community. Okay, it's not like expecting some help only from outside, but we should be able to look after ourselves. Not only ourselves, but also other people. That's what we are talking about in Buddhism, helping all mother sentient beings. And if you do nothing, then how can you help? You see? Okay. Okay. So many things to read. Then the text is talking about the actual training in the bodhicitta, which is primarily talking about two types of bodhicitta: conventional bodhicitta, ultimate bodhicitta. Okay, this you remember, please. Conventional bodhicitta means bodhicitta, training in bodhicitta. Ultimate bodhicitta means training in the wisdom, understanding emptiness. So this text is primarily talking about these two things. Even if you are unable to remember the rest, please remember this. I told about this before also, I think on the second day. And I'm repeating this again. The main subject matter of this text is training in the two bodhicitta, the conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. Conventional bodhicitta means the mind that aspires to become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. Ultimate bodhicitta is the wisdom realizing emptiness. Now these two should become your friends for the rest of your life and for many lives to come. Pray for that. May I become a good friend of the conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. Why? Because these two great friends will help you remove the two most obstructive negative emotions in your life, which are number one, self-cherishing attitude, number two, self-grasping mind. Self-cherishing attitude means a mind which thinks and cherishes just about oneself and not about others. A mind which only thinks about oneself and ignores and forgets the well-beings of others. That's called self-cherishing attitude. It's not saying that you don't take care of yourself. But to have this mind which thinks just about yourself and completely forget about the well-being of others is a very bad mind. The second self-grasping mind means a mind which sees things, or all things, as having independent, inherent existence. So these two are our sworn enemy. All the negative emotions arise from these two. Primarily the self-grasping, the mind of ignorance which sees things as having inherent independent existence. If you know this, you are on the track. You are on the national highway. And sometimes we need to make these teachings very complicated, but sometimes it is important to grasp something so that you get something. So what you are going to get this time? I mean, I'm sure most of you know all these things very well, but if not so acquainted with these things, you remember two things. By attending Geshe Lagzola's talk, I made friendship with bodhicitta and wisdom realizing emptiness. Why? Because all my sufferings come from the two enemies, the self-cherishing attitude and the self-grasping mind. So the target of this text is how to reduce all afflictive emotions, especially the root cause of the self-afflictive emotions, which are self-cherishing attitude and the self-grasping mind. Is that clear? That has to be clear. Otherwise there's no point talking too much, if you don't have something set. This way. Should be clear, okay? So that is the main subject matter of this text. And it is this first mind called bodhicitta or conventional bodhicitta, which is the entrance to the Mahayana. We call ourselves Mahayana, somebody with a great mind. And if you have this mind of bodhicitta, then you are a follower of the path of the Mahayana. If you don't have that, then you are out of the circle of the Mahayana teaching. There are three doors. The door to become a Buddhist is, remember the three doors. Sometimes when we say three doors, it means body, speech, and mind. But I'm not talking about this here. I'm talking about another three doors. The door to become a Buddhist is taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. If you wholeheartedly take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, you become a Buddhist. So the door to become a Buddhist is taking refuge. The door to become Mahayana is cultivating bodhicitta. Okay? The door to engage in tantric practice, initiation, empowerment, tantric empowerment. Through tantric empowerment, you are entitled to do tantric practice. So this is also another good way of remembering the important points of this teaching. So therefore the text is here, it is saying that it is only the bodhicitta which is the door to the Mahayana path. So the text goes on explaining about the greatness of this mind bodhicitta. So since bodhicitta is so important, we need to train our mind in this bodhicitta. It's not easy to cultivate bodhicitta and become a bodhisattva. Okay? But right now we need to, at least on the aspirational level, repeatedly repeat words like Sanji Shodan Soji Shonam la Changju Padu Dani Kyapsuche, Dagi Jinso Jebe Sonam Dola Penje, Sanji Dubar Sho Sida bodhicitta. Taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and aspiring to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. So you need to recite these words early morning few times, 3-4 times, in the evening 3-4 times. So whenever you have time, read a little bit, and then say, may I become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. Important. So you need to train your mind in that. So bodhicitta is primarily a kind of two-pronged attitude. One aspect of this mind says, may I become Buddha, the aspiration to become Buddha. The second aspiration is, the very reason to become Buddha is to help all other suffering sentient beings. May I, so the very definition of bodhicitta is, how nice if I become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. How nice if I become Buddha, one aspiration. The second aspiration is to help all other sentient beings. Okay? Now with the process of cultivation of bodhicitta, there are two traditions. One is called the tradition of exchanging oneself for others, and another is called the tradition of the practice of the 7 cause-effect relationship. The tradition of exchanging oneself for others means, and in fact this is the tradition that is followed here, a tradition which is followed by Shantideva in his Bodhicharyavatara, where you think that until now I have been primarily thinking about my purposes and completely ignoring others. Now I realize that this is absolutely wrong, because others also, like me, wanting happiness, not wanting suffering. Number one. Number two, not only that, they have been kind to me from time immemorial. Even in this life, everything that I enjoy comes due to the help of other people, directly or indirectly. Of course, with your stupid mind might start thinking, if I get benefit, so what, I paid money. But even if you have money, if there's nobody producing these things, you won't get anything. The question is not so much about whether you have paid money or not. The question is you are getting the benefit. The question is not so much about whether others have a wish to benefit or you are not, but the question is that you are getting the benefit. Like for example, this text This text we say, oh, Japsuchi, we put it on the head. But the text has no motivation to help you. It's a lifeless object. But because of the fact you are getting benefit, therefore you appreciate this text, you respect this text. The gold has no motivation to benefit you. Diamond has no motivation to benefit you. But because you get benefited from that, therefore you value them. So don't think that, oh, if I get benefit from others, so what? I'm paying money. It's a wrong way of thinking. Okay, wrong way of thinking. So you need to think that others are exactly like me, wanting happiness, not wanting suffering. Secondly, they have been very kind to me. And in past lives, they have been my mother, brother, sister, whatever, Today I don't know them. You're not knowing them is not a reason that you should neglect them. Even in this life, it is possible that the mother and that the parents and the children get separated for many, many years. There are many cases like that. So later on they meet and then they don't recognize each other. Now because of the fact that you don't recognize each other, if you say, I don't care who is this, that's wrong, you see. And then particularly others are more important than yourself, because in your case, however important you are just one person. The others are so many. If the rest of the people flourish, if they are happy, you will naturally be happy. Like in the case of Tibet, the Tibet as a whole, the Tibetan community as a whole, if it is flourishing, it is successful, you are part of that team and you will naturally flourish. If the rest of the Tibetan people and community are like poor, illiterate, dirty, even if you are rich and clean, and it won't last long. You will not be able to enjoy. So from many angles, to care more about others is really the long-lasting source of peace and happiness. And to think just about oneself is the root cause of all kinds of problems, physical and mental sickness. Nga, very small, narrow-minded way of thinking. Nga chikuru chungna shinda karichena che. Stupid way of thinking, We do have that. It's an inborn tendency, you see. But that's wrong, you can see. And then the second process is, and then Shantideva, if you read Shantideva's text, you must read. He puts a very, we don't have time to go into detail, but he gives one very powerful reason why you should take care of others. He puts many reasons. Then even if you try to, rebut those reasons, then he says, okay, now if you don't want to, care more about others than yourself with these, their reasons, then I'll ask you a final question. That is, why you are caring so much about yourself? For example, your body, why you are taking so much care about your body? Then you will say, of course, this is my body. Yes. Right now you are saying this is your body. But look at the origin of your body, from where it came from. It came from your parents. The egg and ovum of the parents formed your body. That egg and ovum which formed your body is actually their body, not your body. But you have given the name, this is my body, and then started looking after it. You got so familiar with it. Today there's no difficulty, this is my body, I must take care of it. No problem. So similarly, today when I'm asking you to take care of others, then you think, oh, this is others, different, because you don't know the reality. So he says, if you take others as yourself and make your mind habituated with that, gradually you will be able to take care of others just as you are taking care of yourself. This is not only taught in the text, but look at how a mother takes care of the child. She considers her child and takes care of the child more than herself. So that also shows we have the capacity to do that for others. If you could do it to your children, why not to others? Okay. So if you train your mind, you can achieve all this. The second process of cultivation of bodhicitta is what is known as the 7 cause-effect relationship. That means remembering all sentient beings as your mother, remembering their kindness, and then developing a wish to repay their kindness, and then developing loving kindness, and then compassion, then a strong sense of responsibility that I myself will come forward and remove their difficulties and problems. And then finally, these 6 causes then will produce the 7th fruit, which is called bodhicitta. So that is one process of cultivation of bodhicitta. Okay? So now in this process, whichever method you adopt, that's fine. But in order to develop bodhicitta in any of these 2 processes, there is a big obstacle, the hurdle. So therefore the next line says that put all the blame. So we are talking about the second point, which is training the mind in the path to enlightenment. There is bodhicitta, which I said is of 2 types, conventional bodhicitta, ultimate bodhicitta. Now when you try to train your mind in that, so therefore the first line reads training in relative bodhicitta. That means bodhicitta. Now when you train in the relative bodhicitta or bodhicitta, then what's important is put all the blame on the one. That means ordinarily we keep on blaming others. It is because of him I was not able to do that. It is because of her I could not do that, and so forth. If these people were not there, I could have been like flying or whatever, But then this text says put all the blame to one. That means put all the blame not to others but to the self-cherishing attitude. It's because of this deeply rooted self-cherishing attitude that you stumble and fall everywhere. You develop suffering, you develop dissatisfaction, you develop fear. Even if there is a small earthquake, the first thing that comes in your mind is, I will die. You will never think the rest of the people will die. Even if there is a lightning, the first thing that thinks, it will hit on my head. As if all this like lightning and all these natural calamities are waiting for a chance to destroy you. As if. Then you keep on thinking all the negative things. The ghost is waiting there to harm me. So sometimes I jokingly tell people, don't think there are a lot of evil forces or ghost is waiting, they are unemployed looking for you to harm. Unemployed ghost is waiting for you to harm. It's not like that. They are also employed in their own sense. So it's only because you are weak, you become vulnerable, then negative things befall upon you, So all the lack of success and failures that you experience is because of this narrow-minded, self-cherishing attitude. It is this self-grasping which produces host of negative emotions, hatred, anger, jealousy, and so forth. Because that, as I said, the self-grasping and self-cherishing attitude, they are the bosses, the president, the prime minister of the negative emotions. So when we talk about doing Dharma practice, it's like an election, You have two parties, the positive parties and negative parties. The positive parties are led by bodhicitta and wisdom, understanding, emptiness. The negative party is led by self-grasping and self-cherishing attitude. So far, the negative party is winning. They already captured our headquarters. They are relaxing, sipping there. Now we are talking about revolting against those. We are talking about dethroning them. That's what we are talking about. Okay? So that's called Dharma practice, if you do that. So therefore, all the sufferings, unpleasant experiences comes from negative emotions, comes from action, negative actions, comes from negative emotions, comes from the self-grasping, self-cherishing attitude. And these self-cherishing attitudes, they have been your enemy for a long time. Not like ordinary people. Ordinary people, they may harass you, they may make you angry for a few days, then they might go to some different place, they might die, or they might change, become your good friend, things like that. So don't worry so much about people, you see. As I told you yesterday, Shantideva said, you don't have to kill people, they'll die. They'll die. You don't have to harass them, they will be harassed by somebody. You don't have to make them suffer, they are already suffering. Okay. But these negative emotions, as I said, they have been your enemy for a long time. And their only job is to harm you. There's no other job, as I said yesterday. And where are these negative emotions? Where are the ringleaders of these negative emotions? They are not outside. They are in you right now. Ordinary enemies, however horrible, bad they are, they come from outside. You can run away from them. You can gather your forces and fight against them. If you can't fight, then you can plead and say, please spare my life, I'll do whatever you say. Probably your life will be spared. But these negative emotions are not coming from outside. They are in your mind. And we have this very interesting tendency that whatever is there with you, you tend to glorify it because it belongs to me, it should be good. Anger is bad, yes, very bad. But my anger, there is a reason. That's what we do. So sometimes I give a talk which is called talk on smelly socks. Just to make people laugh. Like for example, if it is my smelly socks, because it belongs to me, sometimes I lift it up to my nose and see whether it's really smelling or not. I'm sure many of you have done it. So don't think it's just me, Now in the case of the socks which is worn by other people, it may be brand new socks, but you'll say, it's socks. So our attitude is like that. So the negative emotions that you have, you think it's good. No, it's not good. It's not good. So therefore you need to say, as I said earlier, you need to thoroughly identify these negative emotions and then say, I know you have been lingering here for a long time, but you managed to stay here because at that time I don't have the wisdom. Now with the wisdom I am able to see, you cunning fellow, who you are. Now I'm not going to submit to your dictates. Gone are the time, gone are the day when you bullied me, when you exploited me. Now there's no room. Get lost. Kick them out. There's the process. I remember very well at one time during one of the tantric initiation when His Holiness was giving tantric initiation. So in the beginning there is a ritual where the Lama, sprinkles some water, and then they say, okay, if there is any evil forces who are around here trying to disturb the teaching, then please, this is very important, don't disturb, you go. And then as a ransom they give some food, things like that. So the Lama will after that sprinkle some water. Then His Holiness at that point sprinkled the water to himself. He said, I'm doing this, I feel like doing this because the real negative emotions are not there, it's here. It's amazing, it's a new, almost like new thing. The traditional we say. It's really, it's very true, very powerful. So therefore, we had all agreed and we made this slogan, I want long-lasting peace and happiness. We agreed, yeah? So one that disrupts, one that obstructs that long-lasting peace and happiness is these negative emotions. So if you let them relax in the headquarters of your mind, then to say that I want long-lasting happiness and peace is hypocrisy. Then no point talking about that. So if you genuinely want that long-lasting peace and happiness, then you need to make some effort to at least reduce the intensity of these negative emotions. It's not easy to, completely destroy them, but reduce the intensity of these negative emotions. And one very best way of doing this is, as I said earlier, you should judge yourself which of the negative emotions have a predominant presence in you. If you have more anger, deal with that, reduce that anger. If your impatience is more, reduce that. Jealousy is more, reduce that. That's the way. Okay? Then if you are able to do that, then that is called real accomplishment. Then the purpose of listening to teaching is fulfilled. Then you are really doing practice. If you're not doing that, then it doesn't really matter. Some of the lamas say, if you don't do that, then it doesn't matter. You have received like 100 initiations. And the Lama had touched his hand on your head 100 times or 200 times. It doesn't really make much sense. So one has to work in removing these negative emotions. So with the destructive qualities of this negative emotion, especially self-grasping and self-cherishing, and the Buddhas they say that even if I keep on talking for eons about their destructiveness, it will not come to an end. There's hardly anything bad, destructive, which is not a result of these negative emotions. Okay. There was a great teacher, Tibetan teacher, who even when he was churning his tea, or when he was chopping the tea break into pieces, when he's beating the tea break, he would say, I'm hitting it on the head of the self-grasping. You see? So this is a very good example. If you know how to practice, then there are so many ways of doing their practice. Yeah. And another teacher says, I have only one job. That only one job is, I will hold the spear of the antidote counterforce and see whether the negative emotions are coming or not. If they are coming, I am alert. I am the guard. I will use my spear and drive them out. If they are not coming, then only I can take rest. There is another teacher who says, if these negative emotions are so powerful, physically so powerful, that we are wrestling, and they throw me down, and the weight of their whole body is on me, and there's hardly anything I can do. The only thing I can do is scratch their face. I will do that. The only thing I can do is grit my teeth. I will do that. I will never submit and yield to their dictates. They're very powerful. So sometimes it's useful to personify these negative emotions and fight with them. And the next point is talking about, just as we have so many of these negative qualities with the self-grasping and self-cherishing attitude, similarly in the case of the bodhicitta, there's so many benefits. So in order to practice that bodhicitta, the next line says, meditate on everyone as kind. Meditate on everyone as kind. Because if you look at the ordinary people, of course they have a lot of negative emotions, they have a lot of shortcomings and faults, but basically I find I have visited many countries, maybe more than 30-40 countries. The ordinary people are generally very kind. They will invite you to give you something to eat, extend their help in whatever way they can. So they have this goodness in all people, you see. And as I said earlier, whatever be the case, all the benefits that we are getting, even the little bit of peace that I get when I see somebody smiling, it's because of others. You are able to cultivate bodhicitta with reference to others. May I become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. With reference to other sentient beings, you can cultivate bodhicitta. How nice if all sentient beings are without suffering. In this way you cultivate compassion. And then of course practice of patience. You can practice with reference to others. You cannot practice patience with reference to Buddha. So therefore, all the spiritual developments, all the facilities, enjoyments that we get in the world comes from other people, the seemingly helpless sentient beings. So therefore we should remember their kindness all the time. That is what is being said in the next. And now when you talk about sentient beings, there are so many varieties. Some are rich, some are poor, some are kind, some are not kind, whatever, Since they have been so kind to you, now it's time for you to repay their kindness. Okay. I mean, there's so many ways of benefiting others. And there's so many ways of doing, good things to others. In this text, I mean, there's so many things here. And one of these words, it says, even when you look at others with love. Yingje samaragashi. Because this I, as I said, is for sharing love and kindness and compassion. So just by your physical expression, your facial expression, you can make others happy, not giving anything. Now today, unfortunately, in many societies, people hardly smile, Now to provide ina dukja siro, they meet the cancer, power he with dung soro, like that. Like the Akonyu, I think this. Power he with dung soro, culture, meeting on up with you like that. Should not be like this, Papa Chidan, Dimosix, Hero, Kalumba Manguna. Janal Chin Yung do Kashi Lagudua. Jamie does on Najadus. Lagudu did a mangotus. So therefore, like, if you live in a community, in a society where people are nice, smiling, it makes you healthy, happy. But unfortunately, these days people think if I have the money, then I don't need people, you see. No, I'm somebody. So long as I have some dollar here, I'm somebody, That will not last long. And Shantideva's Bodhicharvatara says that in terms of the benefit that you get, the Buddha and ordinary sentient beings are equal. This being the case, why is it that you respect so much to the Buddha and not the sentient beings? Yes, Buddha has more qualities than ordinary sentient beings. But in terms of the direct benefit that you get, in terms of all the qualities that you develop with reference to sentient beings, not with reference to the Buddha. And I remember reading this text called Precious Garland, Lamchok Rinchen Tengwa, where it says that if you harm sentient beings, exploit sentient beings, and then the money that you get by exploiting and harming other sentient beings, and if you offer it to the Buddha, then it's like chopping a part of the flesh of the child of a particular mother and then offering that part of flesh to the mother. Because for the Buddha, all sentient beings are like his children. Like if I'm have a very good friend, a mother or a father, and then I talk so highly about the mother and love her, but then I don't care about her child, which she loves so much. And in fact, I cut a part of flesh from the leg of the child and offer it to the mother. How would the mother feel? She will be horrified. She will be shocked to death. So similarly, harming sentient beings, the children of the Buddha, and then pretending that you are a good practitioner and offering some things, it's really hypocrisy. And forgive me, I have seen people like that, who do wrong business, crooked business, and then become a sponsor of great teaching. And then they wear this Tibetan chuba or whatever, I'm the sponsor. I've personally seen people like that, you see. So these are wrong. But we should feel sympathy for those people because of their ignorance, they do things like that. It doesn't make any sense, Because Buddhism is not a show business. And even in the case of, the text says, even in the case of those sentient beings who seemingly appear very rude and very bad, seemingly appear as enemy, even in that case, it is not fair to blame that person alone, because your karma had contributed there. so that this person is your enemy today, so that this person is harming you today. If there's no target, where will you shoot? You have become as a target for the wrongdoings of other people. You have played a part. With our two hands, we cannot clap and produce a sound, If I do this 100 times, no sound will come. But if I use two hands, then a sound comes. So likewise, the sufferings that you get, yes, partly because of other people, but partly you are there as a target. If you don't want to have enemy, you don't want any people to harm you, then you purify your negative emotions. You become a Buddha, you become Arhat, a Bodhisattva, then nobody can harm you. So there partly you are also responsible. And then the same master who composed this text, he says that whether that particular person is your friend or your enemy, but to whomever or with whomever you are developing afflictive emotion, if you are able to see that person as your teacher, then that person, wherever he lives, wherever he goes, he will be happy. That is called transforming misfortune into the path. Ordinarily, when we are overpowered by calamities and misfortunes, then we say, oh, misfortune, But there's a technique in this mind training practice where you're able to transform the misfortune into the path. Like, for example, suffering. Suffering is something that you don't like. But those people who know how to understand and use that on the path, they say suffering is introduction to happiness. Suffering is introduction to happiness. If you have no idea about suffering, how will you understand happiness? And if you suffer, it will reduce your arrogance. It will help you reduce the negative emotions. It will help you reduce bad actions. It will help you do good actions. So therefore, suffering in that sense is not totally useless. It is useful. And sometimes I prefer using the word challenge than suffering. Suffering is more or less a challenge. If you run away from challenge, you will never grow. If you face the challenge, you get new insight, you get new experiences. So therefore, it is not running away from the sufferings and challenges, but facing them, understanding their reality, that you will grow and you can purify yourself. And in the Bodhicharyavatara, it says that if somebody harms you, then you should welcome it by saying that this is like, without expectation, suddenly finding a treasure of gold and jewels and diamonds. Because if nobody harms you, there's no opportunity for you to practice patience. So you can see how your mental outlook and attitude can bring about dramatic changes. And whoever is saying anything bad against you, if somebody says you are a dog, you will not become a dog. If somebody says you are a Buddha, you will not become Buddha. So let them say. What is important is who you are, not what they are saying. People will say something. People have to talk about other people. They'll say something. If you're sitting, people will come and say, why you are sitting, get up. If you are standing, they'll say, why you are standing for so long, sit down. People say something. I have some interesting stories, but we have no time. Okay. And he summarizes this point by saying that there's no need for me to elaborate. You just compare yourself with the Buddha. Buddha practiced bodhicitta, so where is he today? You practice self-cherishing attitude, where are you today? And very powerful. Now Buddha, even after he's passing away, even today so many millions of people are getting benefit. Now we have practiced self-cherishing attitude faithfully, still the same interesting fellow. Next is training your mind, aspiring to benefit others. It explains about the need to first develop loving kindness and compassion. So in this regard, this next line, train alternately in the two, taking and giving. Taking and giving. That means actually it is the translation should be giving and taking according to the text. Giving. Giving means imagine giving all the good things that you have to everybody. I'm summarizing now because we don't have much time. Give all the good things that you have, whoever is in need, in various forms. Ordinary people, clever people, stupid people, ignorant people, beings in the hell, being even the bodhisattvas who still need certain things. You give all, imagine all the good things and give them, whoever they are. Men, women, whoever, dog, whatever. Okay, so that's called giving. And then receiving, giving and taking or receiving. Receiving means imagine that you are receiving all the bad qualities, sufferings, problems upon yourself. Okay? And of course, when we talk about sufferings and problems of others, limitations of others, there are so many. So imagine that you are taking all of their sufferings and problems upon yourself. Now here you need to be a little bit careful, especially those people whose mind is very sensitive. Some people, they get frightened. Oh, I already have so much suffering. And on top of that, I have to receive all the suffering from others. Oh my God. So here you need to think that it's not like that you receive all the sufferings and put it in front of you and you are overwhelmed. Not like that. Imagine bringing all the sufferings of other sentient beings in the form of dirt and soot and so forth, and then put it on the self-cherishing attitude, our enemy. And then imagine our self-cherishing attitude and self-grasping mind is completely destroyed. Like that. And you are purified, you are cleansed. You don't think that you will have to experience extra suffering. And then not only to the sentient beings, but also to the environment. Give everything conceivably good. Nice flowers, nice gardens, clean water. In today's world, everything is polluted. So imagine giving all those pollution-free good things to the birds, to the animals, nice trees, flowers, you see. And it helps. Right now we are at the level of visualization, we are doing that. If you do that gradually, you will actually be able to practice and do those things. So that training. And then likewise, when receiving, also receive all the shortcomings of the environment, just like you have taken the shortcomings of the sentient beings. And then particularly you should give to those who had harmed you. Because normally it's easy to give things to our friends and relatives. Without asking, we'll give to them. But to our enemies, no, nothing. In this practice of bodhicitta, you should particularly give to those people, or imagine giving to those people who had harmed you and who are your enemy today. Whatever is their need, food, clothing, whatever. In short, he says, if you benefit others, the result will be your well-being, your peace. If you harm others, the result will be suffering. And if still you don't understand, then you take yourself as an example. If you want to know how to treat others, then you take yourself as an example. Just as you want other people to treat you, similarly you treat others. Just as you don't want other people to mistreat you, similarly don't mistreat others. So in short, there's the process. So not only giving your good qualities, but also imagine you're giving all your wealth, enjoyments, food, and so forth. And similarly, all your virtuous practices that you've done in the past, present, and you will do in the future. So mentally training is very important, because the more you mentally training these things, the more it will become part of your way of thinking. So this is a kind of habit forming process. And then since you've cultivated this mind wishing to become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, then it's important, whatever wealth, enjoyment, qualities, virtues you have, you should always think this belongs not to me only, but also belongs to others. It's for others. When your practice is to achieve liberation, nirvana, dharma, just for yourself, then the Buddhist teaching says that be contented. There should be less activities, there should be less project, because it's just for yourself. But when you engage in bodhisattva practice, then say, it's good you have a lot of wealth. It's good you have a lot of projects, a lot of activities. Because you're doing all these projects and activities and you're collecting all this wealth, not for yourself but for others. So again you can see here clearly that wealth is a problem if it is only for yourself. Name is a problem, fame is a problem, it's only for yourself. But if you use all this for others, then this is an ornament. For helping others you need wealth, you need name, you need fame. But unfortunately, ordinarily, we use all this just for oneself. Then you get into trouble. So here again you can clearly see Buddhism is not hampering the progress of a country or nation. Because you are talking about doing many good things for others, then you need all these things. So that is the bodhisattva way of practice. So having undertaken such bodhisattva practice, if you use these things just for yourself, then it's a fault. So I'll not spend much time explaining in detail about the need to the cultivation of loving kindness and compassion. Train alternately in the two, taking and giving. Begin taking with yourself. I've already explained this, okay? And with this process of practice, if you get a little bit familiar and habituated with this practice, then the next stage of practice is called mount the two upon the breath. Mount the two, that means the practice of giving and receiving on the breath. That means now in your meditation, when you breathe out, you should imagine, I'm giving all my positive qualities and wealth and everything to others. When you breathe in, then you should think, I'm receiving all their negative qualities, sufferings and problems. So there's the meaning of mounting the two on the breath. And then next, the text is talking about how should you do your practice during the post-meditative session. There are 3 objects, 3 poisons, and 3 roots of virtue. That means during the post-meditative session, when you encounter 3 objects, that means an object which you like, object which you don't like, and an object which is neutral. Then with an object that you like, you develop attachment. Object which you don't like, you develop hatred and anger. Object which is neutral, then you develop a neutral attitude, or ignorance. You develop ignorance. So that is the meaning of 3 objects. There are 3 objects, 3 poisons. This is how the 3 poisons arise with reference to the objects. So therefore, the 3 roots of virtue means So now, since you are undertaking this bodhisattva practice, it is important that when you encounter these three objects, do not let the three poisons arise. Instead, you should cultivate the three virtuous qualities arise. That means one without attachment, one without hatred, one without ignorance. Okay. These in brief are the instructions for the post-meditating period. Be mindful in order to admonish. Be mindful in order to admonish yourself, train yourself with the words during all activities. So that means, in short, not only you should visualize and think and practice in this way, but verbally also you should recite. Because if you verbally recite these things, then it will be a great reminder. Verbally also you should say that I'm going to do this practice. Therefore, Kamalashila stages of meditation, it says that therefore, with respect to the practice of great compassion, you should practice that whether you are walking or you are standing or all your activities in all the time to all sentient beings. So verbally means verbally you should say that may all the sufferings ripen upon me, may all the good things go to them, things like that. So there are a lot of prayers like that which you should recite. So such a training of bodhicitta is important because it's only by such a mind that you can actualize the Buddhahood. Oh, sorry, I'll stop here.